I'm on my way to church. I love my church. It's Central Christian Church, Henderson. And I don't think gold was the right eyeshadow. I was in a hurry. I don't care. This is me. This is what I do. Random. So, yeah, I gotta get there. It almost takes about almost 20 minutes now from where I live. I used to live really, really close. And the area I was in wasn't very safe, so I'm really blessed to be in this area. I take care of my brother's dog, his family dog, and his family's home, and I just rent it out while they travel. And Wendy is my sister-in-law, and she has a YouTube channel called Non Krang Loves, NONGRANLOVES. I had to think about that. She's Thai, half Thai and white. And anyway, it's been inspiring. It kind of made me want to do YouTube. So they're going to be here tomorrow. There was a lot of parking, look. So we've got a central coffee shop that's really neat. And I mean, you can get some non-GMO stuff, but you know, it's a coffee shop. Renovated this whole church. And it looks great. It's like fixer-upper style. $2 for fish bowl. That's cute. Here's the main entry. Popcorn.
A lot of fun today, Indiana Jones. Great
Indiana Jones, who? Free popcorn. When they had like Star Wars figures everywhere, but they didn't do it this time. Hollywood theme. And the ushers, they're passing out popcorn. See. I really like this renovation. They used to be so closed in. This is a neat quote. What God did in the past is more important than what He did in the past. And here's the coffee shop. Here's what it looks like. They just renovated. It's really great. Lots of space now. We used to have all these walls, and they did the open concept. Open.
In our lives. And I think Indiana Jones, you know, he's always going on these adventures that are really all about like relics of faith. The Ark of the Covenant, which was this huge symbol of the Jewish faith in the Old Testament, or the Holy Grail. Remember that? Like, which, you know, is supposedly the cup that Jesus drank from before the crucifixion. And so it's always about the relics of faith. When you look to the Bible, you realize, look, you don't need to be Indiana Jones to experience adventure in your life, and you don't have to pursue a relic of faith. God values faith more than the relics of faith. And when you give your heart to Him and surrender to Him and activate your faith today, you can begin to break up some of your funk. I think some of us, if we're honest, would say, you know what, I'm in a little bit of a funk. You know what I'm talking about? Just kind of feel, you ever just feel like you're sort of in a funk? Just sort of, it could be from a lot of things. For some of you, maybe you're kind of in a funk because there's a lot of unknown. Like you're going through a breakup or a shift in your job, or there might be a move on the horizon. There's a lot up in the air. Maybe you're in a place where you're going through a divorce and you aren't sure what's going to happen. Maybe there's some things going on with your kids. You aren't sure kind of and everything can just, you ever get to that place in your life where everything feels so up in the air, you just kind of get paralyzed by it all, and you just sort of walk around in a funk? That's one way that we can experience funk. Another way is just predictability. Sometimes things aren't unknown in our lives. Things get all too known. You know, like same job, same food, same kids, same spouse, same stuff, same everything, same every day, right? It just never changes day in and day out. You know, the old, like you get in at night, you go, you have the same old food, you go up to the same old bedroom, you get in the same old bed, you turn to your same old spouse, you ask the same old question, you get the same old answer, you go to bed, you get up tomorrow, you do it all over again, right? It just feels like the same old, same old. And in that predictability, sometimes we can just kind of get in a funk where we're just sort of like, I don't know, man, I'm just not really excited about anything. I'm kind of numb to everything right now in my life. So I want to talk to you today about how we can go on an adventure through faith in our lives. And I'd like to suggest to you that if you will activate your faith, you can break up the funk in your life. You will activate your faith, you can break up some of the funk in your life. So to do that, we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 11, if you want to follow along in your Bibles, Hebrews chapter 11, and we're going to look at the Hall of Faith. That's what Hebrews chapter 11 is called. That's what it's known as. Hebrews chapter 11 is this whole chapter dedicated to faith and the great people of faith that you read about in the Bible, in the Old Testament. These were incredible individuals who did amazing things through faith. And so Hebrews 11 is going to start by giving us not so much a definition of faith, but more like a description of what faith does in our lives. And then it's going to go on, and we're going to jump down to verse 8, and we're going to look at the guy who is kind of like the Indiana Jones of the Old Testament, and that's Abraham. So here we go. We're starting verse 1. When we get to the red word, I'm going to ask you to read it out loud, really loud with me, okay? Help me out. Here we go. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says, faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. He's saying this is what faith does. Faith gives you confidence, and faith gives you assurance, even about things you cannot see. When you activate your faith, you will break up some of the funk that you may be feeling in your life. First, I want to challenge you to think about activating your faith in your future. Activate your faith in the future in your life. Now, when it comes to an adventure, I think one adventure many of us take at least once a year, once every other year, is we get away on a vacation. Now, when you think about taking the adventure of a vacation, in that adventure, there's at least two kinds of people. On the one hand, you have planners. Planners really like to plan out every moment of a vacation, right? You want to know where you're going, when you're going to get there. You're going to research on the website. You're going to check things out. And then we got to go, and then planners don't like their plans to be messed up. And so here we go, it gets all crazy. Turn to the person next to you and say, what is the plan? What's the plan? All the planners right now feel really good, like, oh, glad I came to church today. What's the plan? If you're a planner like me, listen. The challenge with faith is you can't always plan faith. Faith is obeying God in the unplanned place of obedience, at the unplanned pace of obedience. Trust me, I want to. But the adventure happens in our hearts and lives when we start making some room for God to work and realizing even when our plans are getting tweaked out and messed up, it's okay. Because God's large and in charge. In fact, we're going to learn that lesson from Abraham's life. Check it out. Abraham, you go down to chapter 11 of Hebrews, beginning in verse 8, and look at this. It says, it was by faith that Abraham, help me out, obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. Look at this. He went without knowing where he was going. Y'all, the wingers get really excited about that. They're like, look at that. Not having a plan is biblical. It's right there in the Bible. He went and he didn't know where he was going. Let's go, the ulcer is starting to release. Just right there in that moment, they're like, how could you do that? How could you go and not know where you're going, right? Like, what if he got there and it was like a convention that was in town and all the hotels were booked? What if he couldn't get a rental car, right? What if there were no gluten-free restaurants? What if he found himself in a situation where ultimately, like somebody had to go to the bathroom and they were stuck in traffic and they weren't near an exit and oh my gosh. So the planners get really nervous here in this moment. But listen. Faith means following God even when you don't know where you're going.
Yep.
Faith means following God even when you don't know where you're going. You don't have to have all the travel details if you're traveling with the one who does. Right? So you can find yourself in a situation where you're like, man, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen in my marriage. I'm not sure what's going to happen with my kids, right? You might be in that situation right now where you're like, I don't know where we're going to live next month. I'm not sure where I'm going to be working next month. Everything may change. It feels like everything's up in the air. I feel like I'm just in a funk because I don't know what's coming next. And even when you're in the middle of a funk, even when it's kind of all up in the air, all around you, you can still activate your faith in the future because the future is secure in God. And so you trust Him and you lean into Him, and it'll change how you experience the present. Listen, some of you right now, you say, you know what, I feel a little bit lost right now in my life. And faith says, you're not lost. Some of you say, I feel like I'm alone. You're not alone. Some of you say, I feel like I'm in the dark. You are not in the dark. Some of you say, I feel like I don't have hope. You do have hope. Some of you say, I don't feel like I have a future. You do have a future. Some of you say, I don't feel like God is moving and working in my life. He is. Some of you say, I can't see Him moving and working in my life. So that's why it's called faith. So you say, look, I don't understand what God's doing. You don't have to understand it to believe it and to stand in it and to say, look, I can't see it right now. I don't understand it right now. I'm not sure what's going on right now. But God, I believe and I stand in faith and I trust that you are moving, you are working, you aren't done, you are still doing your thing.
Woo! Woo! Praise God.
I mean, don't know where you're going. And when you know who you're following, that's more important than knowing where you're going tomorrow. When you know who you're following, you can say, look, God, I trust in the God who the Bible says is the beginning and the end. Listen, who the God who the Bible says was and is to come. The God of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The Alpha and the Omega. The one who's literally, it says his hand stretches across the expanse of the universe. The one who has numbered the hairs on your head. And the Bible says literally knows the current number of hairs on your head. And for some of you, it is less today than it was yesterday. It's an amazing thought. And He loves you anyway. Listen. And God does not abandon His kids. God does not abuse His kids. God doesn't turn His back on His kids. God doesn't walk out on His kids. You're His kids. He loves you. He cares for you. You got to stand in that in faith. God doesn't, look, sometimes He'll discipline His kids. And we deserve that. That's no fun, right? But sometimes, like every loving parent knows, sometimes you got to discipline your kids to bring them back on the path. Yeah, sometimes God will discipline us. The Bible talks about God disciplines those that He loves. So if you're not disciplined, then, well, that's another problem altogether. Right? So He'll discipline us. But it's out of love for us in our lives to bring us back so that we live in, lean in, and realize we're His kids. He's got our back. So, you and I, when we will embrace in our heart and in our lives, when we will activate our faith towards the future, man, a lot of things can happen. You can start to have peace in your heart and in your life, even if fundamentally you are in a situation that isn't very peaceful. You can start to have your worry diminish, even if you're in a situation where you got a lot of reason to worry. Because you're trusting in a God who's bigger than all that. Some of you feel like you're in the wilderness right now. Listen, the wilderness is where God gets you ready for the promised land. Think about the Israelites. The Israelites roamed in the wilderness for 40 years. What was happening? God was getting them ready. He was shaping them. He was preparing them so that they could cross over into the promised land. God is getting you ready to step into your promise. Your miracle may be on the way. Your destiny may be on the way. Some of you right now, you feel like you've missed your destiny. You missed your miracle. But you haven't missed your miracle. You haven't missed your destiny. God's still on the throne. God's still got your back. You're still His kid. He's not done. You're just wondering right now. But you're getting ready. And you're being prepared, whether you realize it or not, to cross into your promised land. And you got to activate your faith and say, I'm going to believe that. And I'm going to walk in that. Some of you say it feels really uncertain right now. Uncertainty is the place where God teaches us to live in the certainty that comes from faith. Uncertainty is the place where God teaches us to live in the certainty that comes from faith. Stand in that certainty that comes from faith. When you do, you'll get peace, you'll get joy. Look, you'll start singing along with the Eagles. I got a peaceful, easy feeling. I know you won't let me down, 'cause I'm already standing on the ground, right? All day long. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're standing on the ground. You're standing on the ground. You say, the ground doesn't feel very firm. It's kind of freaking me out. And that's where your faith comes in and says, it may not feel very firm, but my God has got it. He's got the whole world in his hands, and he's got me, and I'm standing on his word and on who he is. Solid ground. Activate your faith in the future. And then secondly, activate your faith in the familiar. Activate your faith in the familiar. Some of you say, look, the problem is not that there's a lot of unknown in my life. The problem is everything is way too known. Everything is way too predictable. I remember a few years ago we bought this new couch. And we put it in our living room. And there's a new couch, right? I should be excited about getting a new couch. That's an awesome thing, right? We put this couch in our living room, and I was so bummed out. And I was bummed out not because the couch didn't meet our expectations or whatever, it's a beautiful couch. But I remembered, like, my parents had the same couch their entire life until they died. And they bought that couch when my dad was about the age that I was at when we bought this couch. And I remember sitting it there, and in the midst of all the excitement, I just had this moment where I looked at the couch and I thought, is this it? Is this the couch that I'm gonna grow old and saggy on and watch old westerns and bad TV news and talk shows until my kids come in one day and say, Dad, it's time to go to the old folks home. You know, we're done. Like, is this the last couch I'm ever gonna buy? And Lori's like, it's a new couch. And I'm like, yeah, man, it's a new couch. I felt like I had adulted so hard, right, that there was nowhere left to go. Predictability. It can freak you out. It can scare you a little bit. And faith says, look, you got to keep activating your faith. Look at this. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 9. It says, even when, speaking of Abraham, even when he reached the land God promised him, look at this, help me on the red word, he lived there by faith. For he was like a foreigner living in tents. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. So look, Abraham had received God's promised land. Abraham had moved into the promised land. We just read that together. But what's going on here? Even though he moved into the promised land, even though he received much of God, what God had already given him, at least partially, he still lived by faith. Just because God has worked in your life, just because you placed your faith and your trust in Jesus, just because you believed in him, and maybe he cleaned you up, maybe he put you back together, maybe he forgave you and healed you and did a work in your life, right? Maybe he restored your sanity and restored your love for others and people. Maybe he took your bitterness and helped you begin to live in kindness and forgiveness towards others. Just because he did that in the past does not mean that you stop following him in the present. It's not like you're just waiting along for heaven now. You got to activate your faith every day if you want to get the benefit from your faith every day. No, God gave him the promise. He kept living even though he's in the promised land, but he's still living by faith. So how do we do that? Like, how do we activate our faith? Well, remember the scene in the last crusade of Indiana Jones where he has to step out into the unknown? And he's got this statement. It's something like, only by a leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. And do it. And so he's right there, right? He can't jump over this chasm. He can't get through it. And he just finally, I think we got a clip of it. He just finally steps out in faith. And in that step of faith, right, all of a sudden, actually this whole path appears that was camouflaged by the mountain or the cliff on the other side, and he's able to walk across. Look, sometimes in our lives, we just got to take a step. Some of us, we're kind of bored in our faith right now. Some of us, it's all just become too predictable. And you can't remember the last time you were excited about the things of God. You can't remember the last time, your heart beat fast because you were taking a risk spiritually. You can't remember the last time you woke up on Sunday like, oh man, I get to go to church. People! Right? You're like, church, I'm so fired up. I don't know what I'm going to do. Here we go, everybody get in the car. We're going to go to church. We're not going to fight the whole way. We're not going to argue. We're going to be happy. It's going to be amazing. God's going to move in our life. Instead, for some of you, for too long, you get up and you're like, oh, I should go to church. I should do it. I should do it. Right? Then you get in the car. Come on, the worst family fights happen on the way to church. How many of you had one today? I love you. It's okay. You can admit it. I'm with you. I'm in. I've been there. Good news is I come to church on my own most of the time, and my wife comes on her own and with the kids, and we're all good. But look, I get it. Like sometimes in the rush of Sunday morning, getting everybody in the car, everybody there, it could be tense, it could be difficult. But in the midst of all that, you're here, which is an amazing thing. When's the last time you were excited about that? When's the last time you sensed God could do something new in your life? Look, some of us are in a funk because we haven't taken a spiritual risk in a long time, and we're not activating our faith in small ways. We're just not taking that step. You don't step into your destiny by hiding in familiarity. You don't step into your destiny by hiding in familiarity in your life. If you want to step out of step out into your God-given destiny, you got to be willing to take a step, right? Just take a step and trust Him. Maybe for some of you, you can't remember the last time you invited a friend to come along with you to church. You can't remember the last time you took that risk. Man, get out there, take that risk. If you can't remember the last time you waited in the lobby to see if your friend was actually going to show up, go try it, man. It's an unnerving experience. I did it just a couple of weeks ago, and you're like, come on, man, come on. Tell me who's going to be here. Right? You're waiting. Last time you use your gifts to help another person. Step out. Use your gifts. If you can't remember the last time you trusted God financially in your life and you were generous, look, become a generosity rock star. Trust God. Go on that journey. Let that risk of faith be an adventure for you, because you'll start seeing God show up. If you activate your faith, He will break up your funk. You'll just start to break up the funk in your life. Now, this will look different for everybody. Let me just give you a couple examples from my life over the last week and a half. A little over a week ago, I had a friend of mine. I won't go into all the details of it. I'll just say this. He did something that really hurt my feelings. And kind of deeply wounded me. And I just felt like, man, he knew it would hurt, and he did it anyway. And I felt betrayed. And I felt bad enough about this that I didn't sleep at all last Thursday night. You ever felt bad? You ever felt hurt bad enough that you don't sleep at all? You just turn over and over. I wanted to sleep, but I just kept turning over and over and over and over all night long, right? And this is what kept going through my mind. I just kept saying this kind of in my mind. I'd roll over, I'd be sort of half asleep, roll over again, and I'd think, I would never do that to him. I would have never done that to anybody I called a friend, much less an enemy. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. I got up the next morning, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of liked how that anger was feeling. I kind of liked brooding on that a little bit, being torn up, because by the next morning I was mad. First you're hurt. Sometimes that goes on for a day, sometimes that can go on for a month or 2 months, but then what usually follows pretty soon after is you get mad. And you're like, oh, we're going to settle this. We're going to square this right up, right? That's where I was Friday. I got up, and I remember I had this moment when I was getting ready to leave, and I thought of this verse. I'm going to read it to you. This is just my personal journey, but I think you'll relate. Ephesians 4:26. And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. Anger gives a foothold to the devil. So here's what that's saying. That's saying that the devil wants to get a foothold in my heart. The devil wants to get a foothold in your heart. A foothold is a place where a person can get a secure kind of footing so that they can make further progress. The devil wants a foothold in my heart so he can turn it into a stronghold of unforgiveness. And if he turns it into a stronghold of unforgiveness, what does that mean? Well, when you got a stronghold of unforgiveness in your life, you stop trusting other people. You get more cynical and skeptical about everything. You stop smiling as much. You start frowning a whole lot more. You got a weight you're carrying now. And here's what will happen. If you don't let God transform that pain, that hurt, that bitterness in your life, you'll start to transfer that pain and hurt and bitterness to the people that you love around you. Some people, I stood there on Friday, I looked in the mirror, and I said this out loud, exactly what I did. I said to myself, no. I will not give the devil a foothold in my life by hanging on to bitterness and unforgiveness, even though I kind of like it, even though he deserves it, and a whole lot more. Look, I'm still going to have a conversation with him. We're still going to even some things out as far as that goes. I don't trust that person anymore. But forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. Here's what forgiveness means. I give up my sort of self-entitled right to retaliate. I'm not going to worry about even the score. I'm not going to wish anything bad on them. I'm going to pray God blesses them and works in their life. Now, I don't trust them yet. That's going to take a while. But I'm still love them and be kind to them in my life. And I surrender that to God. God, you take care of that. You deal with that. That's yours. Don't give the devil a foothold in your life that he turns into a stronghold of unforgiveness and bitterness. Don't do it. So I had that experience, and then on Friday, this last week, just 2 days ago, I spoke at this conference, and I had the huge honor of speaking after just one of my heroes, Dr. Bernice King, who was the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. And it was amazing for me because I felt like the history and the connection. I mean, she was 4 years old when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. The country lost an incredible leader that day. She lost her daddy. And she said when she was growing up as a young woman, as a young adult, she went through a phase where she really had hate in her heart towards basically all white men, which who could blame her? And she said the way that God sort of softened her heart was through some of the simplest of things. She said she was doing an interview with a guy, a white man, and at the end of this interview, he took the mic off and he walked over to her and he just said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she said it was like one of the most powerful hugs she had ever experienced in her life. And it helped her remember that some people did some bad things to her, but that doesn't mean everybody is bad. That some white people had been horrible to her, but that doesn't mean all white people are bad. That some individuals had hurt her, that didn't mean everybody had hurt her. And that started her on a journey. Now today, she's a faith leader. She does a tremendous amount with leading out in racial reconciliation, really carrying on her father's incredible work, and she's such an inspiration. But she's sharing all this, and then she walked off the platform, people, and I had to go up and speak. I was bawling my eyes out, man. I mean, I was an absolute mess, right? She walks down the steps, and I walked up to her, and you know what I said to her? But before I went up, I said, "Look, I can't speak unless you give me a hug." I mean, I didn't know tears were coming down my face, so she gave me this huge hug, and then I went up there, and, I fumbled around. I mean, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. There's a picture of me and Dr. Bernice King. Amazing moment. Amazing moment. But I think I was so emotional after that experience because, frankly, I'm so ashamed. I'm ashamed of the history of racism in our country. Not only that went on, but that still goes on. I hate it. I hate it. I hate what it's done. I hate the way it divides us. I hate it. And I feel so powerless to do anything about what has happened because you can't go back. None of us can go back. We can't go back. We can't unwire it. Whether you're a person of color today, whether you're Caucasian, whatever, none of us can go back. We can't go. The only place to go is forward. And going forward, we have to make choices, right? And so she gives me such tremendous hope, Dr. King, about how we can all make choices for a better tomorrow, how we can grow in our love and respect and tolerance of one another and our empathy towards one another. And I just want to have a moment here. I want to say a few things to our people of color that are here, a part of the Central family, to those of different races and tribes and backgrounds and languages. I want to speak to the diversity that exists in our church, and I want you to hear my heart in this. It is truly, I guess first I just want to say thank you for the privilege of allowing me to be your pastor. I mean this with all my heart. It is the greatest honor of my life. It's the greatest honor of my life. What I want you to hear is this. I don't understand. There's a lot I don't understand about the road you've walked and about what you've experienced. But I am so humbled that you would trust me in this environment to lead you spiritually. And I want you to know I love you and I have your back. I have your back. People of color, I have your back. My Latino friends, I have your back. My Asian friends, I have your back. It doesn't matter where you're from, my Philippine, my Hawaiian friends. Look, listen to me. We stand together or we don't stand at all. There's no other way forward. We have to learn how to stand together. And so I thank you, and I mean this like from the bottom of my heart, for being here in this church. And I want you to know, you need to bring your friends and your family, because we need to be more diverse every week. We need to grow more diverse as we go forward into the future. In every way. If it doesn't happen in the church, how can we ever hope it will happen in our culture? If we don't go first, who's gonna go, right? It starts right here, and it starts with us, and so I thank you for that. Now, I don't know what your next step of faith is. Just
Breaking in, shaping up, then checking out on the prison bus.
If it wasn't for this church, I swear, I would not have known Jesus. I'm telling you right now, I would not have known who God is. And the thing about that is, I probably would have killed myself back then. And God is really good, and He's going to use this church. I'm so blessed. Maybe you can visit it one day. Let me know.